Afterwards, blood drinking and psychic vampires feel energized or otherwise better than they would if they were to sustain themselves on regular food alone, like fruits, fish, and vegetables, which they eat too. These vampires describe themselves as atheistic, monotheistic or polytheistic. Some identified as heterosexual, some homosexual and some bisexual. Some were married, some were divorced and some were parents. Unquestionably, I found the vampires I met to be competent and generally outwardly normal citizens. They performed bloodletting rituals safely and only with willing donors and participated regularly in medical exams that scarcely, if ever, indicated complications from their feeding practices. Outside mainstream culture. What was perhaps most surprising about the vampires I met though was their marked lack of knowledge about vampires in popular culture. They seemed to know much less than you might expect, at least for vampires, about how their kind were depicted in books and films. By this I mean to say that the people I met with and interviewed hadn't turned to drinking blood or taking psychic energy simply because they had read too many Anne Rice novels. In fact, the real vampire community in general seems to have appropriated very few of the trappings mainstream culture attaches to creatures of the night. Many do dress in gothic clothes but certainly not all the time, and very, very few sleep in coffins. In fact, those vampire who do dress a certain way or wear fangs do so long after realizing their desire to take blood. This is what might be called a defiant culture. Real vampires embrace their instinctual need to feed on blood or energy and use what mainstream culture sees as a negative, deviant figure like the vampire to achieve a sense of self-empowerment. They identify others with a similar need and have produced a community from that need. But real vampires can also help us understand, and perhaps even shed, some of the ideological baggage each of us carries. They show us how repressive and oppressive categories can lead to marginalization. Through them, we see the dark side of ourselves. More generally, this community shows that being different doesn't have to force you onto the margins of society. Real vampires can and do exist in both normal society and their own communities, and that's okay.